Hi guys and welcome to another fairy tale video. Today we are having a famous fairy tale. It's called Rapunzel. I'm a little bit curious if it's the same or not. The same as we know, I mean, because they are always a bit different, but there are way more different ones out there too, and it's hard to explain, but basically the fairy tales in here are from the past, but they do stem from different stories that were told way earlier than these ones. So it's not the earliest story told, but it's kind of the earliest Rapunzel story, if you know what I mean. But yeah, let's start. Rapunzel. Once upon a time there lived a husband and a wife who had been wishing for a child many years, but it had all been in vain. Finally, the woman became pregnant. Now, in the back of their house, the couple had a small window that overlooked a fairy's garden field with all kinds of flowers and herbs. But nobody ever dared to enter it. One day, however, when the wife was standing at the window and looking down into the garden, she noticed a bed of wonderful Rapunzel. She had a great craving to eat some of the lettuce, and yet she knew that she couldn't get any, so she began to waste away and looked wretched. Her husband eventually became horrified and asked what was ailing her. "If I don't get any of that Rapunzel from the garden behind the house, I shall have to die." Her husband loved her very much and thought, "No matter what it costs, you're going to get some Rapunzel." So one evening he quickly climbed over the high wall into the garden, grabbed a handful of Rapunzel and brought the lettuce to his wife. Then she immediately made a salad and ate it with great zest. However, the Rapunzel tasted so good to her, so very good, that her craving became 3 times greater the next day. Her husband knew that if she was ever to be satisfied, he had to climb into the garden once more, and so he went over the wall into the garden, but was extremely terrified when he stood face to face with the fairy, who angrily berated him for daring to come into the garden and stealing her Rapunzel. He excused himself as best as he could by explaining that his wife was pregnant and that it had become too dangerous to deny her Rapunzel. "All right," the fairy spoke. "I shall permit you take as much Rapunzel as you like, but only if you give me the child that your wife is carrying." In his fear the man agreed to everything, and when his wife gave birth, the fairy appeared at once, named the child Rapunzel, and took her away. Rapunzel grew to be the most beautiful child under the sun, but when she turned 12, the fairy locked her in a very high tower that had neither doors nor stairs, only a little window high above. Whenever the fairy wanted to enter the tower, she would stand below and call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel had radiant hair as fine as spun gold. Each time she heard the fairy's voice, she unpinned her braids and wound them around a hook on the window. Then she let her hair drop 20 yards and the fairy would climb up on it. One day a young prince went riding through the forest and came upon the tower. He looked up and saw the beautiful Rapunzel at the window. When he heard her singing with such a sweet voice, he fell completely in love with her. However, since there was no doors into the tower and no ladder that he could reach her very high window, he fell into despair. Nevertheless, he went into the forest every day until one time he saw the fairy, who called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." As a result, he knew what kind of ladder he needed to climb up into the tower. He took careful note of the words that he had to say, and the next day at dusk he went to the tower and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." So she let her hair drop, and when her braids were at the bottom of the tower, he tied them around him and she pulled him up. At first Rapunzel was terribly afraid, but soon the young prince pleased her so much that she agreed to see him every day and pull him up into the tower. Thus for a while they had a merry time and enjoyed each other's company. The fairy didn't become aware of this until one day Rapunzel began talking and said to her, Tell me, Mother Gothel, why are my clothes becoming too tight? They don't fit me anymore. Oh, you godless child, the fairy replied. What's this I hear? And she immediately realized that she had been betrayed and became furious. Then she grabbed Rapunzel's beautiful hair, wrapped it around her left hand a few times, picked up a pair of scissors with her right hand, and snip, snap, the hair was cut off. Afterward, the fairy banished Rapunzel to desolate land, where she had to live in great misery. In the course of time, she gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl. In the same day that the fairy had banished Rapunzel, she fastened the braids that she had cut off to the hook on the window, and that evening, when the prince came and called out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," she let the braids down. But when the prince climbed up into the tower, he was astonished to find the fairy instead of Rapunzel. "Don't you know what, you villain?" the angry fairy said. "Rapunzel is lost to you forever." In his despair, the prince threw himself from the tower. He escaped with his life, but lost both eyes. Sadly, he wandered around in the forest, eating nothing but grass and roots, and did nothing but weep. Some years later, he made his way to the desolate land where Rapunzel was leading a wretched existence with her children. When he heard her voice, it sounded familiar at first, and then he immediately recognized it. She recognized him too and embraced him. 2 of her tears fell upon his eyes. Then his eyes became clear again, and he could see as usual. The end! Well, it was definitely not the Disney version, because in Disney stories, the young 12-year-olds don't become pregnant. I mean, I don't know, maybe she's a little older then, but definitely a very young mother. But yeah, I hope you like this fairy tale. And then I see you in the next video. Bye!